The planet of Tenari loomed dark and desolate as the human shuttle descended into its atmosphere. Once a vibrant world, it now lay cloaked in perpetual night, its people forced to seek refuge deep underground. The surface, bathed in sunlight that should have sustained life, had become lethal. The deadly virus that ravaged the Tenari thrived under its rays, forcing the species to live in the shadows, hiding from the very light that had once nourished them. Dr. Mason Wilder stood at the helm of the shuttle, arms crossed, staring at the desolate landscape below. His weathered face bore the marks of too many pandemics. Each outbreak he'd fought leaving him more jaded than the last. Wilder had been in the business of saving lives for decades, but his optimism had died long ago. He wasn't here to inspire hope. He was here because no one else could do what he did. Behind him, Sergeant Liam Brooks quietly inspected his gear, methodical and silent. His military role was clear: protect the doctor and ensure the mission's success, no matter the cost. Brooks was all precision and discipline, his sharp blue eyes scanning their surroundings with a soldier's instinct. His presence was imposing but not intrusive. He spoke only when necessary. There was no need for words between them. They both knew the risks and accepted them. As the shuttle landed, they were greeted by a tall figure standing alone in the dim, artificially lit underground cavern. Yazar, the Tenari diplomat and their appointed guide. His slender form was draped in ceremonial robes, his large, expressive eyes betraying both weariness and wariness. The virus had already begun to leave its mark on his people, and Yazar had seen the effects firsthand. He bowed slightly as they approached, his movements slow, deliberate. "Welcome to Tenari," Yazar said in a voice tinged with formality. "We are grateful for your assistance." Wilder didn't return the pleasantries. "Gratitude won't save lives," he replied flatly, stepping off the shuttle ramp. "I need to see the infected. I need to start working immediately." Yazar blinked, taken aback by Wilder's bluntness. He had expected more compassion from the humans, perhaps even a show of sympathy for the plight of his people. Instead, he found himself confronted by cold pragmatism. Still, there was no time to waste. "Follow me," Yazar said, his voice tight. As they walked deeper into the bunker, the weight of the situation settled heavily on all of them. The air was thick with a sense of decay. The once great halls of Tenari now echoed with the whispers of the dying. They passed by rooms filled with the sick, their pale, fragile bodies ravaged by the virus, covered in dark lesions that pulsed in the faint light. Wilder's expression didn't change. This was just another outbreak to him, another puzzle to solve. Yazar, on the other hand, couldn't hide the pain etched on his face. These were his people, his friends, his family. And yet, despite the urgency, he couldn't shake the growing distrust he felt toward the humans. They had come to help, but at what cost? Yazar's duty was to act as a bridge between their species. But the more he observed Wilder's detached demeanor, the more he questioned if this was a bridge worth building. "Your people's methods will have to follow strict protocols," Yazar said, his tone firm as they approached the research station set up for the human team. "There are certain traditions we must respect, even in times like these." Wilder shot him a glance, unimpressed. "Tradition won't stop this virus," he replied. "I don't have time for ceremonial nonsense. Every minute we waste costs lives." The tension between them was palpable. Yazar stopped in his tracks, turning to face Wilder directly. "You don't understand, Doctor. This is not just a matter of science. The Tenari way is built on centuries of knowledge. Your customs are irrelevant right now." Wilder interrupted sharply. "The only thing that matters is stopping this virus before it mutates any further. If you want to save your people, you'll let me do my job." Sergeant Brooks stood a few steps behind them, observing the exchange without a word. His instincts told him this mission wouldn't be easy. He had seen enough during his tours to recognize when diplomacy was fraying. But his job was clear: keep the doctor alive and ensure the mission was successful, regardless of any friction. Yazar's hands clenched at his sides, struggling to maintain his composure. He had heard rumors about human arrogance, but he hadn't expected it to be so blatant. His mind flashed to the elders who had warned him to be wary of their saviors. Yet, deep down, he knew the humans might be his people's only hope. As much as it pained him, Yazar swallowed his pride. For now. Very well, Yazar said through gritted teeth. But if you want our cooperation, you will show us respect. This is our home, and these are our people. Do not forget that. Wilder didn't respond, already scanning the medical equipment the humans had brought with them, ready to start the work that mattered to him. Yazar watched him for a moment longer, then turned to lead them further into the bunker, his mind racing with doubt. He had made the first step, but at what cost his people's dignity? As they walked deeper into the heart of the underground facility, the air grew colder, and the silence between them grew heavier. For Yazar, the mission had just begun, and with it, the delicate balance between hope and trust, a balance that seemed more fragile with each passing minute. The underground laboratory hummed with the cold efficiency of machines, a stark contrast to the chaos outside, where the infected Tenari lay. Dr. Mason Wilder sat hunched over his microscope, his eyes scanning the viral samples with the intensity of a man chasing an elusive answer. The virus was unlike anything he had encountered, rapidly mutating, resistant to conventional treatments, and more aggressive in the presence of sunlight. Every test yielded the same grim result. No matter what method he used, the virus adapted, evolving faster than Wilder could counter it. Sergeant Liam Brooks leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Wilder work in silence. The sound of the doctor's breath, steady but frustrated, filled the room. Brooks had seen that look before, the determined focus of a man cornered by an enemy he couldn't understand. He said nothing, knowing Wilder wouldn't welcome small talk. In the soldier's mind, his role was simple: observe, protect, and wait for the inevitable moment when things went wrong. Yazar entered the lab quietly, his thin figure casting long shadows under the dim lights. His face, always composed, now carried the weight of his people's desperation. "How much longer?" he asked, his voice a soft plea. Wilder didn't look up. "As long as it takes." The Tenari diplomat approached, his gaze shifting from Wilder to the vials of alien blood neatly lined on the workbench. "Our people are dying, Doctor. The elders are growing impatient. They believe you are withholding information." Wilder straightened and fixed Yazar with a hard stare. "I'm not hiding anything. What I've found is unsettling, and I need more time to confirm it." He hesitated, unsure whether to reveal his growing suspicion about the virus. Wilder was never one to speculate without concrete evidence, but something about this disease didn't feel right. Yazar's eyes narrowed. Unsettling in what way? Wilder sighed, standing up and moving to a larger screen where a visual of the virus's molecular structure was displayed. He pointed to the data. "The virus is mutating too fast, almost like it's been designed to do so. It reacts violently to sunlight, which is why your people are safer underground. But the rate of mutation suggests this isn't natural. Someone made this." For a moment, Yazar didn't respond. The words hung in the air between them like a toxic cloud. "Are you saying this was engineered?" His voice was barely a whisper, the implications too horrific to process. Wilder nodded. "That's exactly what I'm saying. I can't prove it yet, but all signs point to this being a bioweapon. If that's true, someone wanted your people exterminated, and they used this virus to do it." Yazar staggered back, his hand reaching out to the lab table for support. A bioweapon? But who would do this? His mind raced with the possibilities. The Tenari had enemies, yes, but none with the capability to create such a precise and deadly virus. Unless it came from within. Brooks, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "If this is a weapon, it means someone with deep knowledge of your people's biology made it. This isn't just about killing. It's about targeting your species specifically. Someone wanted to wipe out the Tenari." Wilder nodded grimly. "And whoever did it knew that sunlight would be the catalyst. They knew your people wouldn't survive prolonged exposure. It's a death sentence." Yazar's face paled, the enormity of the situation crashing down on him. His people were not just victims of a natural catastrophe. They had been deliberately targeted for extinction. He felt the weight of his duty bearing down on him like never before. "We need to tell the council," he said, his voice shaky. "They must know the truth." Wilder's jaw tightened. "No, not yet. If you tell them now, there'll be panic. We're already hanging by a thread, Yazar. Your people are desperate. If they find out this was done deliberately, it could trigger chaos. I need time to find out who's responsible and how to stop it." Yazar's fists clenched, torn between his responsibility to his people and the truth that could destroy them. "You're asking me to keep this secret? I'm asking you to be smart," Wilder replied sharply. "You tell them too soon, and we lose any chance of controlling the situation. I don't like it either, but right now, we don't have all the answers." The tension in the room thickened. Yazar's instinct screamed to defy Wilder, to go to the council immediately, but he knew the doctor was right. The news of a bioweapon would tear his society apart. The elders would demand retribution. But against who? There were no clear enemies, only faceless fears. "I need time," Wilder said, softening his tone. "Let me finish my work. Once we know who's behind this, then we can act. But if we rush, we'll lose everything." Yazar stared at the ground, his mind spinning with the implications. The realization that this virus was not an act of nature, but of malice had shattered his perception of the world. "I'll give you time," he said at last, his voice low and filled with resignation. "But not much." Wilder nodded, returning to his work. Brooks remained silent, his posture tense. Yazar turned to leave, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. As he walked out of the lab, his heart ached with the knowledge that this was only the beginning of the darkness to come. The truth was out there, waiting to tear them all apart. And the clock was ticking. Days passed in a haze of frantic activity, as Dr. Mason Wilder immersed himself in research, desperate to find a breakthrough. The lab had transformed into a chaotic sanctuary, filled with data samples, discarded tests, and the lingering scent of antiseptic. Each day, the situation grew more dire. The Tenari were becoming weaker, their numbers dwindling as the virus tightened its grip. Wilder had gathered enough information to formulate a hypothesis. Light itself might hold the key to a cure. After countless sleepless nights, he theorized that a unique wavelength of sunlight could be harnessed to create a treatment, one that would target the virus directly without harming the host. But to develop a viable solution, he needed access to the surface, a gamble he was willing to take. "Doctor," Sergeant Liam Brooks interrupted, stepping into the lab with a grim expression. "The council has convened. They're growing impatient with your progress. They want answers." Wilder's brow furrowed as he glanced up from his workstation. "Answers they won't like. We can't risk causing a panic." "Not yet." Brooks nodded, but his eyes betrayed concern. "Yazar is advocating for you, but his position is weakening. The elders are restless. They believe you're stalling." Wilder stood, a fire igniting in his gut. "I'm not stalling. I'm close. I need access to the surface where I can gather more samples. The sunlight will help me finalize the treatment plan." Brooks crossed his arms, his military instincts at war with the sense of duty he felt for his friend. "You know it's dangerous up there. The virus isn't the only threat. There are factions within the Tenari who see the humans as intruders, even enemies." Wilder's frustration simmered. "If I don't act soon, there won't be a Tenari left to protect. We can't keep hiding from the light forever." Before Brooks could respond, Yazar entered the lab, his expression a mix of urgency and resolve. "I overheard your conversation," he said, his voice steady. "The council has agreed to your request, but only under strict supervision." Wilder felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Yazar. This is our chance." Yazar hesitated, casting a cautious glance at Brooks. "I must remind you, Doctor, that the risks extend beyond the virus. Your presence on the surface may provoke hostility among our people." "I'm not afraid of hostility," Wilder replied, determination etched on his face. What I'm afraid of is doing nothing while lives slip away. With a reluctant nod, Yazar replied, very well. I will accompany you. If we can gain the trust of the people, perhaps we can turn their fear into cooperation. As preparations began for their surface excursion, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Wilder and Yazar exited the underground complex, Brooks following closely behind, ever watchful. The surface was even more desolate than Wilder had imagined. The sunlight pierced the thick atmosphere, casting a harsh light that made the barren landscape appear surreal. The trio navigated through remnants of Tenari civilization, seeking areas where the virus had been particularly destructive. Wilder was a man on a mission, fervently collecting samples while Yazar and Brooks kept watch. They worked swiftly, knowing time was not on their side. Look, Yazar called out suddenly, gesturing to a cluster of plants that appeared to thrive despite the virus's grip on the land. These plants, they should be dead, yet they exhibit unusual resilience. Wilder moved closer, examining the foliage with renewed interest. This might be it, he said, his heart racing. If these plants can survive the virus, they could provide the base for the treatment I need. As he began collecting samples, the air grew tense with the distant sound of voices. Wilder's focus shifted from his work to the approaching figures. A group of Tenari had emerged from the shadows, their expressions a mixture of anger and fear. They were armed, their eyes filled with a fierce determination that sent a chill down Wilder's spine. "Leave our land," one of them shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at the humans. "You bring death upon us." Yazar stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "Please listen. We come in peace. Dr. Wilder is here to help find a cure for the virus ravaging our people." The leader of the group narrowed his eyes, skepticism etched across his face. "Help? Or is it a trap? We've heard whispers that you aim to destroy us." Wilder took a step closer, his voice steady. "No, I'm trying to save your people. The virus was created to exterminate you, and if we don't act soon, it will succeed. I believe I can harness the power of the sun to create a treatment, but I need your help." The crowd murmured, doubt still lingering in the air. Brooks positioned himself protectively behind Wilder, ready for any sign of aggression. Yazar, however, raised a hand to calm the crowd. "We must trust in our common goal, survival. We cannot afford to be divided now. We need each other." Wilder could feel the weight of their gazes, some filled with fear, others with defiance. He knew the moment was critical. "I understand your mistrust, but if you let me work alongside you, together we can develop a cure. This is not just my battle. It's yours as well." One of the younger Tenari stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "What if you fail? What if you destroy us in your pursuit?" Wilder looked her in the eyes, his expression fierce. "I promise you, I won't let that happen. I've seen death too many times, and I refuse to be part of it again. But I need your faith. Trust me for just a moment longer, and I will show you the light." The leader of the group exchanged glances with his companions, weighing the risks and rewards of cooperation. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. "Very well. We will give you one chance, Doctor. But know this. If you betray us, there will be no mercy." As they began to work together, the initial tension began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile sense of camaraderie. Wilder felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Perhaps they could turn the tide of despair. But as they toiled under the sun, a greater darkness loomed on the horizon, one that threatened not just their lives, but the very fabric of their existence. The final choice loomed ahead, one that would determine whether they would rise together or fall apart. In that moment of fragile unity, Dr. Mason Wilder understood the true stakes of their mission. It was more than just a cure. It was a chance for redemption. And as the sun shone down, he vowed to embrace the light, whatever the cost.